Marsh Pod. We are recording this after SimWorld today, but before our noon broadcast of Michigan State and New Mexico. So by the time this comes out, that game will be in our rear view mirror. We're talking a little bit of SimWorld U, but I want to start with SWFL. We talked this morning with Rick, and a lot of the conversation just kind of ended up being about the Chiefs and the Texans and, you know, our referees doing stuff, and I don't think we spent enough time on two of the other games, and that is primarily the Bills-Ravens, but also the one that went before that, the Eagles and the Rams. Let's start with the Eagles and the Rams. The fact that nobody thought that Saquon Barkley was worth $12 million, the fact that you've got the front office of the New York Giants making a decision with his kids about whether they should give Saquon Barkley an extension, who he should draft at quarterback. And I know, look, it's all for TV. That's not really how he's making those decisions. But the running game has proven this season that it matters. And if you look at the teams that advanced, all of them are able to run the football. Kansas City Chiefs with Isaiah Pacheco did a great job on the ground at big moments when they needed to. The Bills and the Ravens, pick your poison, because both of them were going to be advancing with a really good running game. The Commanders probably do it with the least efficient, but you look at the Lions, their running game with Jahmyr Gibbs, had they just kept using him, I think they probably win that football game instead of trying to do all the trick plays that they did. And, of course, the Eagles win that game not because of Jalen Hurts, and they've been winning games all season, but because of Saquon Barkley. And I understand that the MVP is probably going to go to Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. I get it. But I think the fact that Saquon Barkley is not getting the MVP despite coming one game short or one start short, 100 yards short of setting the new all-time single-season rushing record, and granted, doing it in more games, I understand that that's always going to be the negative point there, but Saquon Barkley has single-handedly changed who this Eagles football team is. Because Kenneth Gainwell, he had some good runs. They've had good runs in the past, or running backs with DeAndre Swift, but Saquon Barkley shifted everything about that game. He has two long touchdown runs. That's what he's capable of doing. He was almost impossible to bring down, even at the line of scrimmage. The Rams brought everything they possibly could against Barkley, and he still had efficiency. That's why the Eagles advance. That's why the Eagles are marching on, because they did what you need to do in the postseason. Because here's the thing about the postseason. The conditions are often going to be terrible. And we're going to get to more on that in a second. But the conditions are often, especially if you look at the vast majority of SWFL teams, where are they located? In climates that can be negative, right? That can be cold weather climates. Even, granted, some of them, Minnesota and Detroit, are blessed with having a roof over their heads. But for the most part, not only is it the good football teams, but just in general, the football teams, if you look at the map of the SWFL, it is in areas that you could expect to get some not great conditions come January. And we got 3 games with exactly that. And the ability to run the football by Saquon Barkley and the inability to run the football as efficiently by the Los Angeles Rams is what got Philadelphia that win. They're marching on because of Saquon. Meanwhile, Bills-Ravens. People are going to point the finger at Mark Andrews. I don't think that's the wrong thing to do. People are going to say that Lamar Jackson once again can't get it done. I think that is the wrong thing to do. Yes, he had some turnovers, but that team was dominant. They had no punts in that game at all, but didn't punt once against the Bills. The only time they gave the ball or didn't finish with a score was when they turned it over or when it went to half. Or they would have a fourth, they would go for it on fourth down. This was a football team that did not punt. The Bills and the Ravens, the winner of that football game, I still think is going to win the AFC because the Chiefs have not been a good ball club. But what the Bills did was survive. And in football games where you, especially in the postseason, turnovers are so detrimental. And that's exactly what happened. The Rams turned the ball over too many times. The Lions turned the ball over too many times. The Ravens turned the ball over too many times. I don't walk out of Bills-Ravens and say Bills are the better football team or the Ravens are the better football team. I say those teams are about as even as you can possibly get. I said that coming into that game matchup, that those were two teams that I thought were going to be exceptionally even keel. I think that's going to continue because I think those teams are built in almost identical ways. Tough-nosed quarterbacks who can move on the run, good running games, kind of a lack of great receivers, and then a really good defense and a head coach that knows how to get the most out of his guys. That's the Bills, that's the Ravens. The description matches both of them with very good front offices in each. Unfortunately, that should have been our AFC Championship game. It wasn't, because the Chiefs still exist and they beat the Texans regardless of what you think about penalties and the refs on what side. I understand the argument. It's frustrating to watch as a third-party observer, so I can only imagine as somebody with a vested interest. I've been blessed or cursed as a Jags fan to not have to deal with that over the last couple of years, but Miles Jack was not down, so I understand where it feels like the refs can constantly make what seems to be wrong decision, and then of course they double down on it after the fact. The SWFL needs to change its officiating, I think, is the big thing. Here's the other thing, and I think I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong, but I think everybody else is going to tell me I'm wrong, so I'm understanding that this is the wrong take. Speaking of locations, Super Bowl should not only be in domed or warm weather climates. I think it's the most idiotic thing that people have decided to stand on, and it's a hill I'm willing to die on, because we are looking at AFC Championship game is going to be in Kansas City, and the NFC Championship game is going to be in Philadelphia. We had 2 games with snow flurries that drastically impacted the game, and we as a football civilization sit here and say we are okay with that. We're okay with the divisional, the wild card, and the conference championship games all getting decided by, in some way, shape, or form, inclement weather. But the Super Bowl, this one other game, that one needs to be perfect. That one needs to be so pristine of conditions that it'll never be in doubt. And to me, that's horse manure. Because why then? Why not put every single playoff game in the postseason, or excuse me, in indoors? Why? Why are we putting this one game? You can't tell me. I understand that the Super Bowl is the championship. You are the number one team in the entire league. But the AFC and the NFC championship games are both, if not equal, half a tier below the Super Bowl. But those we don't care about. Those we could put wherever, and it matters to have home field. Now, I'm not advocating for home field advantage in the Super Bowl, even though every other major sport does in fact have home field advantage in its championship game. I don't mind that we want to put this in some third-party place, but it is ruining the game, because every other time we are sitting here saying the weather can be inclement and we're good with it and that deciding games, but when it gets to this one game, we suddenly change our mind. It's hypocrisy. I hate it. Put the Super Bowl in cold weather areas without a dome, and let's see who wins a football game. Because there is no denying that the 2 games played on Sunday were more entertaining, in my opinion, than the 2 games that played on Saturday, partially because of the fact that we were outdoors and the snow was coming down, and you're sitting there watching, and you're saying, that looks like it sucks, and the better conditioned competitor is going to walk out of here with a football championship, or with a win, and moving on to the next round. That's what I want to see more of. All right, moving to SimWorld U, it is finally conference championship week. We begin on Wednesday. Of course, our Thursday game of the week is UCLA-USC. The biggest team, in my opinion. There's a lot at stake for a lot of teams. The team with the most at stake is Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's been off for like 6 weeks. We haven't seen them play. Meanwhile, we've seen all this movement in the middle of the top 25. Georgia Tech has the biggest stakes of all the teams entering conference play. One, because their conference is very, very good. They're going to have to play Duke twice. They're going to have to play UNC twice. We're going to figure out what Virginia Tech is, who also has a lot on the line. But this is a Georgia Tech team that came out of absolutely nowhere, and particularly Donta Walker. There is an opportunity right now for the Yellow Jackets to have a massive ceiling. They could be the number 1 team in the ACC. They could walk into Hoopsteria with the number 1 seed. Or, the inverse. This could all come crashing down. All of their good wins, all their good vibes come crashing down if they can't take care of Duke, if they can't take care of UNC, and they can't take care of Virginia Tech. The ACC is very top-heavy, so they're going to get their stabs at Florida State. They're going to get their stabs at the bottom feeders, Wake Forest, the bad teams of the conference. But this is a chance for them to prove, and for Donta Walker in particular, who's right now, in my opinion, a fringe, maybe like a top 8 guy, or he's like an 8 to 14 guy. If he has good conference play when the competition really ramps up, there's a huge opportunity for him to jump into the conversation as top 5. Now, I don't think he's making the top 3. I think the top 3 is going to be set. I don't think there's any question marks about that. Cooper Kingy-Cross, Jamison Johnson, and Lamarian Sherwood are going in some order 1, 2, and 3. I don't think that can be broken into. I think Trey Turner is going to be your number 4 pick, whoever lands there, but I think there's a very real chance for Donta Walker with a good conference play to get things done and play his way into the top 5. That's what's at stake, because now we're actually going to get games with some meaning. Now look, there were some non-conference games that obviously had some intrigue, but by and large, non-conference play was a lot of sometimes good teams and then a lot of just bad matchups. That's not going to exist anymore. Yes, we're going to get our bad matchups, but we have pretty much every single conference with a claim to say we've got a guy that can be, or a team that can be a top 5 team. Pretty much every conference, maybe minus the Big East, but even there you've got Villanova who's fighting their way in. Maybe not the American, but SMU's been playing really well. Maybe not the Pac-12, but USC and UCLA could make the case there as they're the furthest removed from it, with USC just getting bounced out of the top 25 by Rutgers. There's a chance now for all of these teams every single time they go out, and I think the biggest stakes is Georgia Tech because they haven't been here before. They don't have any real great basketball history, and you've got a guy, your number 1 player, Donta Walker, who's a senior who came out of relative obscurity to be a potential top 10 pick, who could play his way up, but with struggles, you could get that confirmation of saying, this is why we didn't believe in them, and they fall back down. I think they're going up. I really like what Georgia Tech has done. But now is where the rubber meets the road for the Yellow Jackets. All right, we're back on SimWorld today. Tomorrow morning, we will continue to be dropping in here on Mondays. Appreciate you tuning in. We will talk to you next week.